back, guys, to another edition of Shootin' the Shit here on the Loudmouth MMA Podcast Network and the YouTube version of this show as well. We're back yet again. Somehow this show continues to stay on the air despite the fact it is possibly one of the worst shows in the MMA world. I am Riley Kontek, here with you yet again. We continue the parade of women's fighters on this show. It's becoming kind of a tradition now at this point. This week we have a 2-0 undefeated pro MMA fighter. We have Shamir Peshewa, right? Did I get it right that time?
Yes, that was good.
Wow, look at that. I'm learning. So how are you doing today?
I'm good. How are you?
No complaints right now. Just doing what I love, talking to fighters and shooting the shit. So, I hate to bring it up every episode, and everyone I know who watches this show hears me say this, but what have you been doing to stay busy during COVID and all the lockdowns that have been going on? How have you been staying busy, and how's training been going?
Training was actually kind of interrupted for me anyway, pre-COVID, because I took a little bit of time off I got the opportunity to open my own gym, like in my own building, and I took it. I was like, I got to do this. So I took a little bit of time off, and there was like some personal stuff going on. I just took time off, and I recently went back to Shield Systems. So I've had some fight offers this year, and it's been really hard to turn them down, but I can't take them if I'm not training full time. And anyone who fights knows that, or watches fights knows that, because you don't want to represent yourself or anyone else badly. And, I've been working out. I own a gym, so I've been working out, but it's not the same. So I started back training, and it's been really good. During COVID, we were shut down. We were on lockdown for a little while. It was kind of weird. I'm not I don't stay home all day kind of person. Like, I'm always at the gym or a gym or an event or something. Like, I'm always somewhere else. So it was nice in some ways to be able to stay home. My dog had some puppies, so that was nice.
Oh, nice.
To hang out with the pups and be around them more than I would have. Also, the first 3 months of this year, I pretty much worked 12 or 13 hours a day for 7 days a week, getting the gym ready and then launching. And we actually closed the week after we opened because of COVID. And honestly, it was hard at first. There's been a lot of people who have come out and donated stuff or helped us out or, made sure that it still happened. So I appreciate all those people, because it definitely takes a village to get a small business to the point where it is successful. And to do it on this big of a scale, in your own building with all the overhead, with all the risk. And I'm like, hell no, let's do this, let's go. Yeah. So after we reopened, we've had a lot of really new members, and they are all coming because we are following the protocols. We are wearing masks, and hardly anyone else was. And so I kind of started getting this reputation for being the rule follower. And there's other gyms the Shield's my MMA gym is now, that's mandated. And there's other gyms, it's now mandated in Knoxville, that you have to wear a mask. And there's still people who don't, but way more people are. And I appreciate that. I don't really care if it's a conspiracy or not. Just wear a mask and let's just be healthier and just get it done. So we've been working out. A lot of the people in our community didn't want to stay home either. The gym is their safe place. It's their release. There's so many things that the gym is for people. So we, after we were shut down the whole time. Mm-hmm. I worked out at home and made home videos for people and just did what I could. And then the gym reopened. And we've done well, man. It's struggling because we're small, but it's exciting because we're growing rapidly. And I think we're growing with the same type of people that will continue to have the culture that we have. I run a small personal training group. So it's there's 10, 15 people working out, but they're all doing their individual things. Mm-hmm. We have a much higher success rate that way. There's not an awkward person with a clipboard standing being do this. You understand what you're doing. My goal is to make them to where they can work out alone. So, and they still keep coming, but they could all leave if they wanted to. The ones who have been there for a long time, they could completely leave, but nobody wants to work out at home and be bored. So,
Yeah, I agree with that. Yeah, working out at home is definitely the toughest thing about lockdowns, Getting back in the gym definitely was big for me. And honestly, I hate to bring up the mental health aspect of the lockdowns, but it was great for my mental health to just get back in the gym and push some iron and, feel like you're actually out. Now I'm playing two or three sports at a time, and, it's just, I really needed that, it's just because, I was just losing my mind. I was crawling up the walls. I'm sure most people were.
yeah, I mean, I don't think it's bad to bring up the mental health aspect of it. It was rough for myself and a lot of people just at different parts of it. Like I did pretty well. And then like the third week I was like, oh my God, this might actually be forever. Like I was like, cool. The first 2 weeks I was like, yep, we're going to do this. It's cool. And then that third week I was like, oh no. And I knew I was going to get depressed as fuck. So I was like, nope, not going to go that route. So we filmed a couple of podcasts about things that were just going on and put them on YouTube. And I tried to change that energy, like changed it. And it was hard, but once we got the gym back, it was a lot easier to you don't have anything to do to boost your own chemicals,
right.
Like there's only so much like sitting at home or watching TV or playing video games. And I like all those things, but I want to go do something. And I still worked out a lot. I still worked out a whole lot, but it's not the same.
Sure. No, I 100% agree. Well, and you said the first 2 weeks were no big deal. The first 2 hours were a big deal. I need to be doing stuff. I'm not.
I found enough stuff at home because I'm never here to do. You know what I'm saying? Like I was like, oh my God, I can do all sorts of stuff. And I had the puppies, and so like I was kind of occupied. And one of my really good buddies, he was like, day one, he was like, I'm not gonna make it, dude. And I was like, you're gonna make it. You're going to make it.
So I mean, like, what do you do for fun outside of fighting then? In the gym, obviously, because that kind of leads into the COVID lockdown. Like, what could you do? But what would you normally do? What are your hobbies other than that?
I love playing video games. Like I really do enjoy it. It was a release before fighting. Or amateur or professional was before martial arts. So I love playing video games, just sitting down and just playing with people all over the world or just playing by myself. I mean, I like video games. I like, during the summer we go to the lake a lot. I love being at the lake and just being outside. But I don't honestly have a lot of free time. I do a lot with my dogs and my boyfriend. That's about the only people who see me, because I mean, even them, if they were like, hey, you don't spend any time with us, we're gonna go now, I'd be like, okay, because it's kind of, you're there all the time.
Right.
And he sacrifices a lot too, so it's kind of like we both understand that. So it's like there's not much room for activities outside of running 3 businesses and fighting. There just isn't, And so if I get free time, it's usually video games or sometimes coloring or something. It's hard for me to stay focused with things.
Right.
I've tried like a bunch of different things to do, but at least with the video games, there's always something happening.
Yeah. I understand that. I was never big into video games, but just for the people watching this, what video games are you into? What's your big 2 or 3 favorite ones?
I love Final Fantasy. I think most people probably know what that is. That's probably one of my favorites because I am older. I played them on Nintendo, Super Nintendo, like I've played them for a little while.
Mm-hmm.
But I most recently have played Overwatch a lot, and it's a team game. So you actually have to play with other people. And I found that to be a lot more fun than some of the other games because there's more strategic things that you have to do to win. If the other team is just as good, I can find myself competing with other people. I like to compete a lot, so
obviously
it's I'm like, oh, you think you're good at this? Like, let's see. Like, can I be good at this, or can I be just as good or better? Or I just wanted to see. I don't care really what the outcome is. I just like to see what I could put into it, and I'd never played games like that. But I really like it. There's a couple of guys that I play with pretty regularly, so it makes it funner when you have, like, we played a lot during COVID, and now they're always like, you're at work all the time. I'm like, yeah.
Yeah, that's a good thing.
Like, I had to go back, which is good, but it definitely they don't understand, you know.
Yeah, for sure. And the one thing I saw on your social media, and I've talked to a couple fighters about this, it does look like you're a firearm owner, if I'm not
Mhm.
mistaken. You know, kind of a weird way I'm gonna phrase this question, but is target shooting a hobby, or is it just a self-defense thing? And if so, like, what's your favorite firearm to use? Because we have a lot of people that watch this show that do like the firearms.
I love shooting. Um, I haven't done much actual like indoor range work
Hmm.
until the last couple of years. I hunted a lot as a kid and like growing up and stuff, and like just as an adult having like my own chickens or ducks or like whatever I had at the time, or like buying a pig and slaughtering it or like whatever, you know, like
Just that
I,
little thing that most people don't do.
yeah, you know, but you know, providing for yourself, you have to have guns. Most of the time I would shoot like little 22s because that's what's going to provide the most meat. That's what's going to provide the
Yeah.
most food. Um, my favorite is probably uh, I dude, I love my 30-30 Winchester.
Nice.
It's from the 60s. It's
Yep.
amazing. It you know, like I can shoot almost anything with it. Like I can hit almost anything with it, but it's because I've had it for so long. So where I don't have a lot of like most people have disposable income that they like buy a bunch of guns. That's never been me. So
Yeah.
I have a 6 hour pistol, and then recently within the last year because I want to get my concealed carry,
Yeah.
but I never carried guns. I never carried guns more. So sometimes people are like, "Oh, you know a lot about guns," and I'm like, "Sort of." I'm like, I know a lot about using them,
Yeah.
like the
Yeah.
hunt, but not as like a as a self defense. You know, like
Right.
I would be one of those people walking around with one in the chamber. I'm not a police officer. I'm not a trained military person.
Right.
Like I don't understand. Like it could go off. You know what I'm saying?
Of course.
Like
Yeah. And the
so.
6 hour, from what I've heard, is a really great pistol, and I actually have yet to shoot one, but I've heard they're very, very good.
I had a buddy, Danny, who worked at a gun shop here that's local uh, for a while, and he had one, but it was too big because he's
Okay.
huge. He's a police officer. He's a big dude,
Oh, I'm sure.
and I was like, yeah, he's fucking huge. I'm like, okay. I was like, so I like the way this shoots, but my hands are. I am not huge, Danny. You know, I'm
Right.
like. So he's like, well, they make a medium one, and I was like,
Oh yeah.
really? And he was like, yeah. And so I went up and I shot it. I also shot a Glock. Um, a lot of people are like, why didn't you get a Glock? And it's just kind of square. Like it doesn't really fit
Yeah, I'm not
in
the
my
biggest
hand good.
not the biggest fan of the Glock. I don't like their trigger system, so I tend to stay away from those. I actually like the squared look. I just don't like the way their triggers function, so I can understand that.
Well, and I don't even claim to know that much. You know what I'm
Sure.
saying? Like as far as like pistols and stuff go, because when I posted on Instagram, people would be like, "Hey, do you know blah 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 blah?" I was like, "No." I was like, "But I'll learn if you tell me." You
Yeah.
know, like this is cool. I'd like to have this conversation, but it's like I don't know a lot about individual weapons or
Hmm.
weapon history like other people do who use guns a lot. I just used them a lot growing up and just more as like a as a utility
Of
weapon, like
course,
almost
yeah.
like a knife or something. So I'm excited. There's a couple of classes locally that I'm gonna take that, and I have a bunch of police officer friends and military friends, so I'm gonna utilize those aspects and see if I can't, you know, carry it and feel comfortable carrying it. And
Yeah.
I just, if I carry it, I want to be trained to carry it. You
Of
know, like
course,
I don't
yeah.
think, you know, like I think a lot of people carry them, and I'm like, do you know how to use that really good? Because I've killed all sorts of shit, but I don't know about that because I'm not using it for that, you know?
Right, yeah, concealed carry is a different story. I mean, obviously, I have mine, and there's, like I think it was like two 8 hour classes you had to take and all that. But no, I mean, no, it's like anything. The more it's on you, the more you kind of just forget about it because it is like you said, a tool. And I honestly see it as an insurance policy. I spent money on it, and if I never have to use it, thank God.
Yeah.
I just, I put money down just to be safe. And if I have to use it, hopefully, God willing, I can use it correctly, but hopefully I
Yes.
never have to get in that
Yeah.
situation. So
Yes.
that's what's really important. So, to get the last question about the guns before we move on, do you prefer using rifles or pistols?
I have way more experience with rifles. I do like the pistols, but I'm nowhere like I can hit a
Mhm.
target with it, you know what I'm saying? But as
Yeah.
far as like hitting a moving target, I haven't tested it out or anything, so I would have to go rifles.
Yeah, I love my AR-15. I have an old World War II 30-06. That thing. If you've ever shot, oh, you said you had like a Winchester or whatever. If you shot that thing, the kickback on that ain't got nothing on that. That thing is made of solid iron and wood. And then I was just thinking, like, I think people nowadays are bigger, like, than they were in World War II. Like, my grandpa was in World War II, and he was like 5'6", maybe 140 pounds. I'm 6'4", 200 plus, and that thing's like pushing my shoulder back. That thing's got some major recoil on it, so that thing's fun for sure. But the ammo is really expensive for that.
Yeah.
So moving forward, just looking at your Twitter profile, it said that you are Native American. So what tribe do you represent?
So
Is it a mixture?
well, I belong to the Shawnee Remnant Band in Ohio.
Hmm.
So part of my heritage is Shawnee. That's where Peshewa comes from.
Hmm.
Um, that is easily traced back, like heritage wise. My dad figured all that shit out. And then on the other side, there's a little bit of Miami and Blackfoot from my
Oh,
mom's side
wow.
because she lives in Florida, or she grew up, lived in Florida.
Yeah.
So it's kind of mixed, but I guess I have like, it's always like a joke. I have my Indian card through the Remnant Band.
Right.
Uh, some people don't respect it. Some Native people don't. Some other people don't. Some people do. Um, you had to show lineage. At the time, there was no blood requirements. I don't even know that you could form one because for so long they haven't given most of the people haven't given their blood.
Right. There's no record or
Yeah,
sample. Yeah.
there's nothing to compare it to in a lot of ways. So people say that it's not as good or whatever else, but then the other people are like, well, if I could claim more, I could live at a reservation. It's kind of a fucked thing, really. I mean, you
Yeah.
have a lot of people who are like, yeah, this is who I am, but they didn't live the lifestyle, and you have people who lived the lifestyle and don't necessarily look like the idea of
Hmm.
Native American
Yeah.
people. Um, so where my people were from the north, like most of them migrated to Canada when colonists came in. Most
Hmm.
of them were out, we're going to Canada, and the other ones came down through Ohio and then into Greenville,
Hmm.
which is where my family's from,
Okay.
Carolina. So if there's record of it, they watched them migrate, like
Hmm.
there's record of that. But it's hard. It's hard to prove. There's no real DNA. There's nothing. There's
Yeah.
no besides like belonging to one of these things. So I think there's probably all sorts of people out there that are probably living more of the lifestyle that you would think a Native American person would live,
Hmm.
But that's usually always like what I'm trying to, I guess, communicate to people. Like that is my heritage and that's what I believe in and like that's how I live my life and I try to like live my life by those things that I was taught.
Hmm.
And so that when I say that I'm like this is who I am.
Hmm.
Whereas some people are like, "Oh, this is you look white." And I'm like, "Well, I'm not." So,
I mean, yeah, the skin color
it's like
thing, and people also don't realize skin color changes as generation things go on. So, and I never understood the skin color thing fucking mattering about a damn. But so, is there anything cultural or like, I guess, that you do in your life that would be, I guess, from that heritage of the Native American that you still do to this day? Maybe something with your family, etc.
I'm extremely spiritual, so there's a lot of like ritualistic things that I
Hmm.
do that I was taught as a child. Um, if I had the means or the property, I would hunt all of my food. I would grow all of my
Absolutely.
food. I've done it multiple times. I lived in like a 20-foot trailer for years and had an outdoor shower, and people just don't,
Hmm.
they didn't live, they don't want to live like that. And like, that's how I want to live. And like, that's more culturalistic. I don't, if I had some huge house, like, okay, that's cool. But like, what did I do?
Yeah.
You know, like what did I make? And what did I grow? What did I help? What did I change? Like, who cares about like a house or
So
like those
kind of what
things?
I'm
So
getting from this is that one of the cultural things or one of the heritage related things is self-sufficiency, which is not a bad thing. I think it's actually a very good thing, especially if there ever was a scenario where something terrible happened in society and you had to take care of yourself and take care of the people around you. I actually think that's very smart, and I'm sure outdoor survival skills is part of that, and I think those are
yeah,
really important. And I actually said that that's something that should be in the curriculum of schools.
I
But
think so too. I think if you understood what life and death was at a young age, you would understand what life and death was.
correct.
You would have a better grip on reality. You would be more well adjusted. Like
Hmm.
there's certain things that going through like having to like get your own food, having to like make your own stuff, but it's like even like the lifestyle of just treating everything
With
the best
respect.
that you
Yeah.
can. Yes, like if yeah, I don't care if I don't like you, like I'll look right past you or whatever. Like if you talk shit to me, I'll talk shit to you. But if not, you do you, man. Like I'm not on this planet to create any kind of negativity.
Hmm.
There's too much of it, like
Yeah,
there's way too much of it. So
for
just
sure.
just the culture of like treating things better and living off the land and the things that you bring into the land would be able to go back to the land,
Hmm.
you know?
Yeah, I think that's legitimate, and I'm glad that you agree with me that survival skills and outdoor and that kind of stuff should be taught in school. I think it's more important than some of the shit that they have in these curriculums, and I'm saying that as a former teacher, by the way.
I also
Um,
think that coping mechanisms should be taught,
in terms,
you know?
give me an example. Like, what do you mean?
Like okay, takes somebody cheats off of your paper and you
Hmm.
get in trouble. How do you cope with that?
Hmm. I probably would kick his ass.
Right. But how do you mentally like go past that battle if you won't kick his ass? Because most people won't.
Yeah.
You
No,
know what
you
I'm
got,
saying? Or
yeah, for
like if your
sure.
dad dies, how do you
Hmm.
cope with that?
For sure. Yeah.
Like there's
Yeah.
some these little tiny minds. I didn't go to school, by the way.
Okay.
I That's something that probably people should know if we're talking about school. I never attended school until I went and got my GED when I was 27,
Oh,
and
nice.
then went to Pellissippi, which is like a community college.
Oh, cool.
So I'm saying this as someone who never attended it,
Sure.
um, so people can be like, no, you're not right, and that's fair. But there's no way to like learn how to like deal with your emotions as a little kid. Like, who do you talk to? Your parents who are like, oh, who cares? Get over it. You were happy 20 minutes ago. Like
Yeah.
okay.
Well,
But I think if you learn
when I
that,
think of
it's
coping
better.
as a teacher, as a former teacher, unfortunately, too many kids' coping mechanisms have turned into the vices, which is marijuana is the big one, and I don't care what anybody's viewpoint on marijuana is. I have a very unpopular opinion on marijuana, which is fine, and I'm not saying I'm right. But, marijuana in the hands of, 14, 15, 16, 17 year olds, you're not teaching those kids to face their problems in life. You're telling them to be cowards and not to face it. So, yeah, I think coping mechanisms is good. And I just think that unfortunately we have a society, and I'm not going to say I'm not without vice. I drink quite a bit, but I think
Everybody has something,
right, but
and I don't care who you are.
there's too many people that are using substances to cope with their issues, and I think that a lot of that has to do with and again, I'm not saying alcohol is not a big one. It clearly is. It's probably one of the biggest ones, but I think the over reliance on marijuana at this point has been a huge issue as well in terms of the lack of coping skills.
Well, because it comes down to, did you get that somewhere safe? Do you know how it was grown?
Right.
Do you know the chemical process was correct?
Hmm.
Do like those are the things it comes down to.
Yeah.
Um, and I think it should be legal, but I don't think 14, 15-year olds should be
Yeah.
smoking. And this is coming from someone who smoked younger than that.
Oh, I'm sure.
Like it just wasn't a thing. It wasn't like if you had a headache, that's usually what someone suggested. It wasn't like It wasn't a big deal.
Right.
But it definitely wasn't taught as an escapism, which I find is what most people use substances to escape,
Right.
whether it's alcohol or anything else. I do it, you do it, everybody does it, because you have to find some way to distance yourself from yourself sometimes.
Right.
And I think if you learned that early on, if you learned that, if there was therapists who, like, you actually had to learn how to, like, express your feeling, if people would actually just say what they mean, we'd be much better off.
Yeah.
But you'll say how you feel, which is not necessarily what you mean, you know? So it's like, I don't feel like there's ever that dialogue with younger people to talk about, like, their feelings or talk about things without being called, like, a pussy or, like, not good enough or whatever. But it's like, how am I supposed to learn how to deal with it if it's never happened before and nobody talks about it?
Yeah, and I understand that part of it as well. I think, and as you're saying, like, yeah, if you have a headache, you have a little bit of marijuana or whatever. But my problem
I'm not saying that's good.
No, I didn't say it was bad or good either way. But my issue is every time there's an issue, that's when I have to do it. So when there's people smoking 4, 5, and 6 times a day, that's an issue, and that becomes a chemical dependency also, because I don't care what anybody says, you can get addicted to marijuana.
You can get addicted to anything.
Exactly.
You can be addicted to your computer. You could be addicted to writing. I mean, you could.
That too.
What patterns did you make in your brain?
Right. And then,
And
the other thing too is social media. I think that people are using that as their outlet to cope or to get their steam out. But there's just so many assholes online that it actually makes it worse. Like, you think you're dealing with your issues, and you're really just getting shit on by people who have no name and no face, and they know there's nothing you can do about it because they're just a nameless, faceless pussy.
I use the internet to learn how to treat things equally. So when someone sends me something and they're like, "Oh my God, you're the hottest girl I've ever seen and the best at everything," I'm like, "Okay, thank you."
That's nice.
Somebody's like, "You're the ugliest person. You have huge man arms." I'm like, "Okay, thanks." Because they should be treated equally, because they don't matter.
Right.
Like, none of them, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah, and
but
that's
it's hard to get there. It's hard to, like, I'm like, maybe I'll be there when I'm like 90.
Yeah, and that's the thing I've always said. I said words don't matter unless you make them matter. That's why I never understood. Like, we've gone from a society of sticks and stones to sticks and stones may break my bones, but words will never hurt me. I actually heard a teacher once say, "Sticks and stones break bones, but words really do hurt." I'm like, are you fucking out of your mind? Like,
but how do you learn how to deal with it?
Well, you
like the hate, like the
you certainly don't deal with it by having adults tell you that the power of words are more harmful than somebody punching you in the face. I mean,
I guarantee you it's not. If I'm like, "You're rude," or "You're a dick," or whatever, or I fucking hit you in the face, it's gonna feel different.
Fair enough, but I mean, I think the more you're exposed to that, I think the more immune you become to it, or the more that you're able to just kind of shake it off. Because I grew up, and this isn't not bringing up ethnicities, but I went to a Catholic school with a lot of Italians, and then past high school I hung out with a lot of Italians. All they do is bust balls the entire time, and at first you probably are like taken aback by it, but then you kind of just realize it's just how guys interact and riff. And if you don't take it to heart, it's no big deal. If you take it to heart, of course you're going to have a problem. But I think that's how you kind of learn how to cope, is actually just experiencing it. Yeah, and having to, again, as you said, having to face it and then say, what's next? How am I going to react to this?
But there should be a step to, okay, this happened now.
Mm-hmm.
How do I deal with this in a mature way?
Mm-hmm.
Or how do I deal with this if my feelings are hurt? Maybe it did hurt my feelings. But if it did hurt my feelings, what does that say about what happened? I actually related it to something that I probably do that's negative.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I'm saying? Like, people could learn a lot by the things that hurt their feelings, or the things that make them mad. Every time I'm mad at somebody, I'm like, okay, what am I really mad at? What am I? And I'm not great at it, but I'm trying.
Right.
Because I learned this way later in life through therapy, and I'm like, why doesn't everyone fucking learn this like way earlier? You know? And I'm like, why is there no like round table to talk about shit like that? You would be surprised how many people are like, yeah, this thing that someone said to me continually over and over again changed the way I thought about myself.
Yeah.
That's when I think words are really important, because you allowed that to become your self-talk tape.
And I think a part
you
of that
know?
also, yeah, and I think a part of that also is the person, that specific person's self-esteem. Somebody who has not a lot of self-confidence, or a person who is, self-doubtful, is more
Well, and we see it in
obvious.
the reverse way too, like with a Ronda Rousey. Let's build her up and like not really, or like
No, I think Ronda was a pretty good example.
I mean, we see it in reverse too. Like Valerie Loretta is even worse. At least Ronda Rousey has some dang moves. Like
Well, that's
shoot.
great that you brought up Valerie Loretta, because that kind of leads into kind of the final topic before we actually talk about fighting.
Uh-oh.
Sex sells in the sport. What's your thought on it? Obviously, it kind of.
Girl, make that money. Don't let ain't nobody on the internet pay your bills, and if they do, it don't matter.
Sure.
It does not matter.
Do you think somebody like Valerie Loretta has self-esteem issues, that she feels like she has to post that and get people to say nice things to her? Because I
She
mean,
might, or she might just be like, I'm hot and I'm showing it off.
I think that too.
Because it can get me further in life.
Yeah,
You have both kind of girls, and you have girls a lot of time in the middle. And being a female myself, I mean, there's a lot of, if I post a certain picture, I will get more responses.
sure.
It's it You can try every day. You know what I'm saying? Like you can change everything. But if you play a sport, odds are you have a male demographic.
Right.
And you might not want it, and you might develop another fan base, but I'm not going to shoot the fan base that I'm a nerd. Most guys are nerds. You know what I'm saying? Like, I'm not going to shoot myself in the foot and be like, I don't want any of you as fans. I
Right.
like a lot of my fans. Like, I actually interact with a lot of the people who follow me and talk to them, because as long as you don't say if you say something that goes past my boundary, I say, don't say that to me, or I'll never talk to you again. If
Right.
you'd like to talk about MMA again, I'd love to. And that's how it goes. Like some guy was like asking me if I could choke him out. Do you know how boring that is? Oh, could you choke me out? Get at least a better.
Let me guess. He said triangle choke, because I've only heard that about
No, no, a
95
rear
times.
naked. It's all for me at least. It's always a rear naked choke.
That's weird.
It's creepy. Yeah, I
Well,
don't want to do that. That's never something. I'm never gonna be like, hey,
yeah, right. Oh, yeah, totally. I'll do that. I'm going to touch on two things. One, I'm glad that you like most of your fans and want them to be, to identify with you and like you. That's really cool. I feel like if I was a famous fighter, I would probably pull the Colby Covington and just be a dick to everybody, because that just makes me
I'm
laugh.
just not. I'm just not.
That would make me laugh. And first off, because I like, chuckling myself. But second, I think there's more money in people hating you than there are people loving you. And I think John Jones
There,
and Colby Covington both proved that.
I agree, but somehow I still have a really large amount of haters, and I'm always just like, ha 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 ha, because
That's
they still
great.
are looking. You're
Yeah, that's
still
just the
helping me.
internet, though. I mean, that's just the
Yeah,
internet. That's just how it is. And the other thing I was going to say with Loretta, she might just be trying to get that Paige Van Zant Instagram money.
I
Um,
love Paige Van Zandt. I don't. She People are like, she's not tough. I'm like, she
no,
still
she's
fought a chick
tough.
with a broke arm, you
Yeah,
dumbass. Like,
yeah.
she's not one of those girls. Like she's not a Valerie Loretta.
No,
Valerie Loretta has good.
Taekwondo.
Yep, she looks pretty when she does things.
Yes, she
You
has
know
a
what I'm
nice
saying? She's very
posterior,
pretty.
from what I've been told.
Yep,
From looking at
she's a very
pictures.
pretty young lady, and she looks very nice when she does martial arts.
Yeah.
That
But yeah, I
changes when
mean,
something hurts you.
obviously those are, yeah, they're two different levels. Valerie Loretta is a featured prelim fighter on Bellator who, again, she's a good fighter. Don't get me wrong, she
But
does
who's
good
gonna
stuff.
sell
But
Bellator for them?
right, exactly, she's not. But Paige Van Zant has mainstream appeal. She was on Dancing with the Stars.
Yep.
She does have she was in Sports Illustrated swimsuit issue. She's
Yep.
fought at the highest level of the UFC, and you can say what you
And
want about
yep.
her fighting. She's fought legitimate competition, and Valerie is still young and is a
And she
prospect.
could.
And
Yeah,
she
she
could at some
definitely could.
points. She could
But
at
I
some
don't
point.
hate her or Bellator for running their game and getting their money.
No,
Like I said, if they're not paying your bills,
no, yeah, fuck who
like if
cares? Yeah,
fuck them.
yeah, I 100% agree.
know?
Now let's
People are
talk.
always like, "Oh, these girls." I'm like, "Girls smarter than you." I started an OnlyFans. I'm just waiting for my identity thing to be on. People are like, "It's porn." I'm like, "No, it's not. I'm just gonna talk to people." But enough people have asked me for it that I'm gonna do it. If I can make extra money
Why not?
doing this thing, I don't give a fuck. And people are like, "Oh, it's porn." I'm like, "Pay $14.99 to find out, I guess."
And
You
then
know,
you pay
like, do
14.99 to
you?
disappoint. Yeah.
I'm like,
So
fuck 'em.
let's quickly talk about your career as a fighter. Right now, as it stands, I know you said you just opened the gym and you've been busy. You turned down a few fights. What are we looking at? Are we still looking at local promotions? Has Invicta reached out to you?
So,
And if it was recent, you can say thank you to me.
well, it wasn't that recent. So,
Okay. Then don't thank
so,
me.
uh, I fought for a while as an amateur. I fought 9 fights. I broke my arm during that time. I had some setbacks during that time. I went pro. I fought a pro boxer chick my first fight, and on paper, in the ring, I felt like she had better boxing than I did. Obviously, she's a boxer, and so she had one fight as an MMA fighter when I fought her, and it was probably the hardest I've ever been hit in a fight. She knocked me down a couple of times, and I just went for a takedown and just stayed in it because I'm in it. You know what I'm saying? I'm not. You can knock me out, you can choke me out, like whatever. Stand up and shake your hand, but I'm in it. Like I'm here, I'm ready, I'm focused. And then the second fight that I had was against a phenomenal grappler. So when I fought her, people were like, people I knew, like my friends were like, I don't think you got this. Like they're like, I don't know if you got this, and I'm like, it's not a dick thing. They know that I would have. They know, like. So I was like, all right. And we had grappled in November, and I'm a blue belt, and she's a brown belt, I'm pretty sure.
Mm-hmm.
But it's like, I'm like, I still will grapple you. I don't care. So I had a knee surgery in between my last MMA fight and that grappling match.
Okay.
So I actually fucked my left knee. Like I couldn't even squat. It was crazy. So once I did that, I didn't care if it was a grappling match. I was supposed to have a fight. The girl backed out. I didn't care. So I took the grappling match. I lost like 7 minutes in, I think, to a 10-minute round, and went and was like, okay, whatever. And then I got to fight her in MMA, and like she had done a podcast, and I like her. I like her as a person. Like I have no problems with her at all.
Sure.
But she had done this podcast, and she's like, yeah, I'm going to fight. And then the next day I'm going to do this jiu-jitsu tournament in Knoxville. And I was like, no, the fuck you're not. Like you're going to fight me, and you're going to feel good enough to do a jiu-jitsu tournament the next day.
Yeah.
And it pissed me off. And I was like, no.
Yeah. That's like saying I'm going to do this easy job and then I'm going to go do this other thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
It's
I was
a
like,
slap in the face.
fuck you, lady. And I like her. I'm going to work with her again. I'm going to work with her in August, and like she's going to come, like I like her, like I have no problem with her, but I was just like, no, fuck this.
Yeah,
and so
I understand that.
I just went as hard as I could, but now I have that experience. We talked earlier, like going further, or like,
Right.
Not landing the jab and still trying to get the jab, or not landing the take, whatever I was doing, not landing it and still being like, okay, I'm just going to go again for it. I'm going to go again for it. And knowing that I don't want to grapple her. Like most of the time, like my opponents, I did want to grapple. I was like, meh. But then like I had that in the back of my head where I'm like, well, I do want to grapple her to show her I can beat her there.
Yeah,
but
for
that's
sure.
People get cocky. You know what I'm saying? Like that's how people get fucked up. So I'd be like, stay focused, do the thing, don't do it. But then most importantly, between that fight and now, I opened the gym and I changed MMA gyms completely. So I'm not with KMA at all.
Mm-hmm.
So I switched to Shield Systems, and I just want to learn more. It comes down to it's a difference of visions, to be honest. Mm-hmm. So I'm like, fuck it. But it's harder to say, yeah, I'll take a fight, even if it's like a really good fight, and you need the money, and you act like you don't care if you get your ass beat, need the money. But it's like, at the same time, I would be disrespecting the new gym. I would be disrespecting myself. I would be disrespecting the fans, because it's not going to be, what if I couldn't be that gritty person because I'm not in the gym grinding, so I can't do that. So it's been hard, but it is bigger promotions, asking now.
That's good.
And it was nice because after I left, I was like, maybe this is it. Like maybe I'm not going to be an MMA fighter, and I kind of had like doubts of myself. I'm like, well, maybe I'm not maybe I couldn't go and do these divisions in Invicta and Bellator and UFC, you know, like maybe I'm not a fighter. Maybe this isn't what I'm meant to do.
Mm-hmm.
And I kind of just was like, I'm going to open the gym and see what happens. And the first one was like a bigger offer. And I'm like, okay, if they think I could do it, then, and it wasn't like
The
a
offer will be
sacrificial
there at
lamb
another point.
situation. It was like an equal situation. It wasn't even like a sacrificial lamb. Like I'm not even going in to get my ass beat, you know, like, so I'm like, okay, all right. And then I just started to kind of really think about it. Like, is this what I want to do? And like, the thought of not fighting, like, keeps me up at night, you know? So it's like, this is what I have to do. Like, I don't really care. And so like, again, with the Bally Laredo or the OnlyFans or those types of things, I understand. Like, you're going to do whatever it takes for you to meet your goals. And I can't knock anybody for doing that. It doesn't matter if they are good or aren't good or believe in themselves or don't believe in themselves or like need guys on the internet to tell them they're cute or whatever, you know, like it just doesn't matter.
Yeah.
Because at the end of the day, that person's main goal is fighting if it is. If not, it'll be something else. It'll be Instagram or whatever else. Like patrons and being like, dude, why would I go fight? I can make more money on sitting on my ass or naked cooking with my husband.
Yeah.
What are you gonna do? You know?
Naked cooking with her husband with the really shitty neck tattoo. Yes. Anyways,
I always say if you want to see the worst tattoos in the world, go to an MMA event or a Merle Haggard concert.
That's an accurate statement. I think no one's gonna argue with that one. So anyways, let's look at this weekend, this Saturday's UFC card. This was taped in advance, so if there's any card changes, I apologize. That happened to us a couple weeks ago. Did you want to talk about the one women's fight on the main card? It is a 135 bout.
Let's see what it is.
It is Ketlen Vieira taking on Yana Kunitskaya. And seeing that there's not a ton of women's bantamweight contenders at this point, this is probably a pretty important fight.
Yeah, I don't know a lot about either young lady just because they usually fight pretty early on the card.
Yeah. Well, I know Vieira.
Kunitskaya she looked really good in her earlier fights.
Mm-hmm.
And then I feel like she hasn't looked as good, but there hasn't been a lot of fights to watch recently.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm not sure when either of them fought last.
So she last fought in December, Kunitskaya. She lost to Aspen Ladd, which there's no shame in that. She's a beast. And she had been on a 2-fight win streak before that. Ketlen Vieira also coming off a loss. She was knocked out by Irene Aldana, who
that was brutal.
Yeah, that was
Okay.
brutal. And
so both girls hungry.
Yeah,
I'd be interested to see what happens during this fight because you're going to see who wants to be there. You know.
And honestly, Vieira, that was her first loss. If she beats Aldana, she gets a title shot, and Aldana took that title shot right away from her. So yeah, I think she's going to come out hungry. I think she'll take Kunitskaya. I think it'll be a close fight though.
Yeah, I think it'll be interesting to see because they're coming both off of the loss. I think that they're going to be a little bit maybe more excited at first. Kunitskaya has fought for a little bit longer, if I'm correct.
She's been around for a while, yeah.
So I would think that she might have the resolve to kind of weather those situations because she might have already been in them.
Right.
You know, she's like, I've got 5 losses, you know, like she's been there, you know, like she's been on the rough. She's been doing those things. So this girl only has 1 loss. So she might be more emotional coming back in. I think, honestly, I think matchups make it, you know, so it's going to depend on, you could have the best triangle in the world and you go against somebody who's their best defense is like they can defend the triangle because somebody throws it on them 800 times a day in the gym,
right?
You know, and you just might not get it. So it'll be interesting to see. I don't know a lot about each girl, so I won't say much more than that, but I will pay attention to that fight. Sure. Maybe we could talk about it on Twitter afterwards, after it happens.
Absolutely. The 3 other fights we'll touch on will be the top 3 listed on the card. The first one's in the lightweight division, a guy that you know, Scott Holtzman. taking on Beneil Dariush. Dariush is a 20-plus fight veteran. Holtzman really seems like he's coming into his own lately. He kind of struggled early in his UFC career and has come back and looked a lot better in his last few. So what do you think about this one?
I mean, people can say I'm biased or whatever. He's really dialed in, and I think he is dialed in a way that somebody who has 20 fights might not be. Even with his struggles, he didn't take a lot of wear and tear. I don't feel like, a lot of the struggles weren't as brutal as some of them. I don't think that he has as much wear as some people. Watching him drill and watching him go with other people, I'm like, I can see the improvement because I've known him for a while. But even before I went to the gym, I knew him. I don't know him well, but you can see that rapid improvement these last couple of fights, and he just seems different. So I think it'll be good. I think it's going to be a hard fight, But I mean, there's not a lot of fights at this point that aren't hard for him, hard for anyone. You start going top 15, you're going to face harder people, and I know he wants it.
Yeah.
So that's always in the back of my head when I know someone's like, let's go.
Yeah, and he's won 5 of his last 6. His last loss came to Nick Lentz, but he's on a 2-fight streak, including a win over Jim Miller in his last fight. And Jim Miller is obviously a fucking legend at lightweight.
Yes.
So that's easily the biggest win of his career. He's looked a lot
And a lot
better.
of people had him not winning that.
Yeah, no, and understandably so, because Jim Miller is just so good all around. Even if he does have as many miles on his body as he does, he really just he finds ways to pull it out, and Scott looked really good in that fight.
And that's what he looks like, right? You know what I'm saying? Like, that's how good he looks in the gym. That's why I'm like, all right, let's go. Let's see what happens, because it is a harder fight, but I think he looks better than he ever has.
Yeah, and Dariush will be a good challenge, because both guys are pretty well rounded, and Dariush is definitely that top 15 guy who's looking to get that challenge from. So I mean, a win over Dariush could put Scotty in the top 15.
Yeah.
Let's go to the co-main events. Chris Weidman dropping back down to middleweight after a brief stint at light heavyweight. He's taking on Omari Akhmedov, excuse me. Obviously with Weidman, he's had a tough go as of late. Obviously the UFC is trying to get him a jump start here. Akhmedov, not a pushover, but not a top 15 guy. What do you think about this, and what do you think about Weidman going forward?
I think he nailed it. I think they're trying to give him something to see how he's going to do. I don't think Weidman's been the same since they took IVs away.
I didn't even think of that. Yeah, I mean,
I've said it for years. I've said it for years.
Yeah,
he would cut that first weight cut. If you go back and look, if you're that much of a nerd to go back and look, you will look at that first weigh-in after the IVs.
Mm-hmm.
It was fucking horrendous, and I'm not sure that his body ever. People don't understand. Like, your body can revolt against you. You know what I'm saying? Like, it can start holding weight. It can decide that you're going to weigh 300 pounds in a month. It's going to go crazy when you do certain things to it all the time. So I think once he couldn't get those replenishments back, I think he was so small afterwards, and he never looked like he did in the cage the next day,
Yeah. And I mean,
and maybe I'm wrong, but if you go back and look, that's when it happened.
Yeah, I agree with you, actually. And you know what? He's 1 in 5 in his last 6, all 5 by knockout. So you do that with the combination of the weight cut. The weight cut can take your chin, and people have seen that before, because your body is one unit, but just because the weight cut is affecting certain parts of your body doesn't mean it's not going to take your chin. And I mean, he's been knocked out by Rockhold and Romero, Mousasi,
and not just
Yeah, no,
like
I know.
full on stiffed by most of them.
Yeah, oh yeah, and then the one gets
And
I
hate to see it. I've been fucked up. I get it.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Like, there's nothing. If I had 5 losses, you would be like, Shamir, stop, and I'd be like, I'm going back. I would be in the same situation. I feel bad for him. I feel bad for some of those guys who never recovered after the IVs.
Yeah, for sure.
I think that was Aldo's problem for a long time.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no doubt about that. Absolutely. And I, he was always a big
I watched
featherweight
those guys
too.
in WEC.
Oh yeah, me
You know
too.
what I'm saying? Like I've watched those guys for a long time. So
Hmm.
it's what sometimes when people are like, oh well, like Chad Mendez. People do not understand
Yeah,
why I think Chad Mendez is amazing. And people are like, oh, he's not that good. I'm like, go watch some
yeah,
fucking earlier shit.
right.
Go watch some There's a reason they mention WC in the UFC all the time.
Oh
It's
yeah, it
because of
was great.
badass.
Yeah, it was great promotion. you know. So, with Akhmedov, he's a wrestler. He has power, but he's not a guy like Dom Reyes who's going to sleep Weidman in under 2 minutes. So I think that's kind of why they set him up there. So hopefully we see some classic Chris Weidman because I was a huge fan of his and he's fallen on some hard times. So I'm hoping to see some classic Chris there.
Me too. Me too.
Yeah. So then we head to the main event. We got the heavyweights. We got Alexei Oliynyk, the boa constrictor, as he should be called, taking on my boy Derek Lewis, one of my favorites to watch. Uh,
My ball's hot.
yeah, my ball's hot. Yeah, he's outstanding on the mic and in the cage. Really, what you see here is definitely a striker versus grappler. Even though Oleynyk has shown power in his hands before, he does own knockouts on the feet, but he's mostly known for his chokes on the ground. That Ezekiel choke is money for him, and nobody seems to understand how to defend it. It's a specialty of his. Lewis has pretty decent takedown defense. Probably the better overall athlete. Probably the quicker of the two, especially with his hands. He's got very good boxing, and then that knockout power is
He's
just
got very great
ferocious.
boxing.
Oh yeah. So why don't you give me a little bit
I
of
kind of
insight on
think
this one?
I think Olenek's gonna get fucked up shooting.
You think so?
I think so. I think he's gonna shoot, and Derek Lewis is just gonna throw those bombs from the bottom. You know what I'm saying? Like just
Yeah.
throw those little uppercuts. Just step off and hook, step off and overhand, step off and uppercut. That's what I would like to see him do at least.
Yeah.
Like don't let him get down there. I hope that I think he probably TKO or knocks him out.
Yeah. Yeah, I think I'm going to take Lewis by knockout in this one. If Oleynyk gets him down, he's in big trouble because Oleynyk
Yeah,
is legit when it comes to
yeah.
submission grappling and catch wrestling.
And it's always those kind of dudes that don't really look like they would be that are.
Yeah,
You know what I'm saying? It's always dudes like him that you're like, and then you start to grapple him and you're like, oh God, I'm
yeah, and
sorry.
that's the thing nobody thinks about with grappling is grip strength, and Oleynyk's grip strength is freakish. So if he gets a hold of you and he gets you there, he's going to keep you there, and he's gonna make you feel uncomfortable.
I
So
have rolled with some people where their whole hand around my wrist. You know what I'm saying?
yeah,
Like enough to where I'm not getting my best
you're
bet is
never
I'm
gonna
gonna.
get it free.
Hell no, not if they're fucking 10 times bigger than me. That's why I'm like, I swear, some of the people that I've rolled with are just giant. I'm like, how do you even exist this big?
Yeah,
I'm 5'6"
corn
and like
fed.
160, 150 before I cut, but it's like, I'm not a giant. I'm not a big person. And that's why
Yeah,
people are like, oh, I fought most of my fights at featherweight. Not because I wanted to, because there wasn't really that many girls around.
right. That makes
Like I
sense.
just fought whoever, and people are like, "Oh, you're featherweight." I'm like, "They're huge.
Yeah,
they're giant. They're like 6. I fought a bunch of them. I'm like, "Shoo, can I just fight someone around my own size?"
that's 25. Yeah. All right. Well, it has been a pleasure talking to you. Thank you very much for coming on. If you have anybody you need to thank, shout out, or if you want to plug anything, use this time now to do so.
If you like violence, video games, and dogs, come follow me. That's pretty much and workouts. You can find me anywhere by typing in Shamir underscore WMMA. It'll pretty much lead you to everything. The Instagram has a link tree with all the other links on it, so I've made it easier for people to access the different things. I'll put this on there. Um, Access different interviews. There's a lot of stuff that I've done over the years that some people that are new might enjoy. I do like to connect with people as long as you're not weird. I'll talk to you,
Yeah, you talk to me
And
though,
weird by
so
creepy, weird by
I
creepy.
know.
And we all know the weird people who say weird nigga choke me out.
Yeah,
Uh, But thank you for having me. Thank you to my sponsors. Thank you to everybody that supports me and hates me. I appreciate it. And yeah,
awesome. Well, I will plug myself really quick, and then I will let you go. Go to MMA Intel for all of our prospect stuff. We have new scouting reports every week on one new fighter that's fighting that week. We got UFC rankings. We got matches to make after each UFC card, Bellator prediction. We got everything there. So if you're a hardcore MMA fan, go there. Catch my work on Combat Press. Thanks to Rob Tatum and Brian Henderson for continuing to have me, despite the fact I pretty much only work one time a month there. They let me basically slack off. And other than that, just keep watching these videos. We have new fighters every week. And they continue to make this the show it is, because let's be honest here, I'm an unappealing person and my interviews are usually the shits. So it's nice to talk to people that are interesting. So, fight fans, continue to watch the fights. For Shamir Peshewa, I am Riley Kontek saying keep watching the videos, keep watching fights, and go fuck yourselves. Have a good night.